The Aussie women survive a scare in a dramatic Ashes clash. Sthalekar and Callum Ferguson talk us through it. Youth picked for the Sri Lanka Test series, but selectors opt for experience for the Champions Trophy squad. Have they got it right? We ask Michael Clarke. And how should India manage three-format star Jasprit Burma? Let's go around the wicket. And welcome to a brand new episode of Around the Wicket. I'm Narrowly Meadows, Callum Ferguson back alongside me, and we welcome back Hall of Famer Sthalekar. Perfect timing to talk about the women's Ashes. Absolutely. Because they've gone 4 points up to nothing after what was a crazy ODI yesterday. 21-run win, but it felt a lot closer than that.
Yeah, it did. I mean, the fact that England bowlers were able to bounce back, bowl Australia out for 180. You thought the game was always going to be England's to lose. There was a little bit of a green mumbo patch on the pitch, and I think about 6 wickets fell to that area. But the Australians fought hard, and what they do so well is when they pry open a door, they jump all over the opposition, and they did exactly that.
Talking to a couple of English commentators yesterday, that was the one that got away. It's going to be tough from here for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know what the Australian cricket team's like when they get some momentum up. 5-0 coming into this series. They've now won the first 2 of the Ashes. They're going to be a hard freight train to stop now. And I love coming out of that game, the amount of impact spin had in that game at Junction. It's wonderful to see. That
one over by Alana King in particular, 2 wickets, almost takes a hat-trick, turned a little bit too much, spun too much. Yes. Unbelievable. She's so skillful.
She's skillful. The amount of drift that she was getting in, so 1.9 degrees into right-handers, then spinning it away 4.4. Consistent. She's a wicket taker. She's arguably one of the best bowlers in the Australian lineup. As an opposition, I don't want to face her. So they've got to find room for her in this T20 side because we've got one more ODI and then we go to the T20 leg.
I wanted to ask about that. Do you pick her in the T20s? Do you think just what she's providing at the moment in these ODIs?
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, to hear those numbers drift and turn to that extent, it's extreme. Good luck to anyone facing it.
Speaking of the changes, Georgia Vole, all out for 180. Not everyone's delivering with the bat at the moment. And you've got Georgia Vole, who played 3 ODIs late last year and was astonishing. Do they need to find space for her in this third ODI?
Yeah, but where, Nez? Do you... Phoebe Litchfield is the next generation. She's scored the most amount of runs since she's come in one-day internationals. Then you've got Elisa Healy, who scored an important 70 in the first ODI. The question is like a Talia McGrath batting at 7. She's kind of slid down the order. But then you're potentially putting Georgia Vole in a position that she's not used to and she doesn't play, or do you find a place at the top and slide it down? I mean, these are good problems to have by the Australian team. The fact that the Australian batting isn't firing and the fact that you're still winning games of cricket, that's good for Australia because they can only get better from here on.
That's where we want it though, isn't it? We want to have players banging the door down ready for an opportunity. And that's what we've got to create in Australian cricket again, on the men's side as well. But in the women's side, it feels like we've had this for a little while, which is great to see. Shows the strength of the Australian women's setup.
As you said, all out for 180. You don't want to paper over the cracks. What conversations will they be having at the moment in the aftermath, even though they got the victory?
Yeah, I think this is probably an issue for the women's game. We tend to play a lot of T20 cricket. So there's an element of we want to kind of stamp our authority. We've got a 50-over World Cup this year, October, in India. So there's a style or a brand of cricket they want to play. But have a look at the pitch, assess the conditions, and it may not be a 300 pitch. It may be a 220, which means you've got to bat accordingly. So that's probably an area that I'd like to see all players kind of assess the pitch, assess conditions, and then kind of find what that total might be.
From England's perspective, we always talk about fielding and energy in the field being a barometer for performance. First ODI, they looked a little bit off, it must be said, but they seemed to tidy that up yesterday at Junction Oval.
Yeah, it is so important at international level. We've talked across formats for a long time how it is the barometer and it's such an important piece of the puzzle If you're not getting that right, you're giving the opposition a huge advantage, and that allowed the Australians to get right into this series. So the damage may have been done in this one-day series, but it is a long Ashes series to come. So they've got back on track, but it's still a long way to go.
Did they look a little sluggish?
Just their catching, which probably falls off the back of the T20 World Cup, where I was surprised all countries, including Australia, were really poor. So fielding as a whole needs to lift from both teams.
Alyssa Healy is keeping and batting, which is great stuff for the captain. Got, as you said, an important 50 in that first ODI. Can she make it through this, tough, arduous series as a wicketkeeper bat?
Yeah, games come thick and fast, and the knee is obviously a concern. First time she's keeping since, I think, the first game of the WBBL. All signs at the moment is she's moving well. She's moving well laterally. To be able to back up a day after and play another ODI, she leapt for a catch, nearly got it. I think it was almost 1.5 slips, but she got a mid on it. Means that she's moving well. She's got a couple of days break now. I think she'll be fine, but it's a kind of a wait and see, suck it and see.
We know that Alyssa Healy can be a little chirpy behind the stumps, and it's often picked up on the stump mic. But I have got to say, I've loved the miking up of the players in internationals, and the girls give so much more than the blokes tend to. There's so much banter. We had Sophie Eccleston saying that Alyssa Healy just called her a pelican. Do we need more of it in the men's side of the game in internationals? The Big Bash is great, but in internationals?
I think it's inevitable. I think we'll see it in the not too distant future, which I think is a good thing. We have a real advantage in cricket that we've got the opportunity with the downtime between deliveries and overs to talk to players out in the ground, get an understanding of what's happening with conditions and the direction that they see the game going in. You might get a different opinion from all 11 players about which way the game's going right now, but that is a fantastic thing. And it also helps the commentators too, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I also think show your personality.
Yeah.
We do it in T20 cricket, but I feel like at an international level, the men just want to give the stock standard answers because they're fearful of criticism. The women have embraced it. They're like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
So and they've gone with that, and because of that, I think there's more of an affinity with the fans because they get to know who they really are, and I think we need to see more from the men.
I love hearing from the women, from the women's games to women's rights. The Champions Trophy and Afghanistan. Pressure is building at the moment, at least, to not have Afghanistan either play in the Champions Trophy or to have countries boycott their games against Afghanistan. Where do you sit on this? Because I know you've got a lot to do with the ICC.
Yeah, so obviously politicians from England and South Africa have kind of weighed in saying they should be boycotted, and obviously there's history in cricket. South Africa did that. It's a really tough situation, and it's very hard to kind of unpack and have one solution. All I know is, firstly, the Afghanistan women don't want to see Afghanistan men disallowed to play. They know that they are kind of the beacon of light and hope for Afghanistan. They just want to play. There's a match that's going to be taking place in January 30 at Junction Oval, where Afghanistan players play. One thing is the ICC cannot kind of impose a punishment on a cricket board that the government have imposed a rule. So it's really tricky. If Afghanistan men were not to play, are the Taliban going to change? That's the real question. And I think that's where people need to kind of dig a little bit deeper. I know that the ICC have got a committee that they're working with the Afghanistan Cricket Board to try and ensure that there's opportunities for everyone, because that's part of the charter of ICC, but it is tricky.
It's such a complicated issue, and when we were just celebrating hearing the personalities and voices of women to women who are literally being silenced, it's so much bigger than cricket, isn't it? Well spoken, Lise. Don't go anywhere because Michael Clarke's going to join us after this short break. Former Aussie captain Michael Clarke joins us now, and Pup, there's been a couple of men's squads announced since we last spoke, so let's go through them, because first of all, the 2 tests coming up in Sri Lanka with the World Test Championship final locked away. They seem to have a little bit of an eye on the youth, somebody like a Cooper Connolly, for example, coming in, much younger options than we're used to in the last few years. Do you think they've got the balance right?
Yeah, hey guys. Look, I think it's a pretty strong squad for where they're going and who they're playing against. I think they've obviously got spin options and all-round options. It looks like they've gone that way. And to be honest, I think they've made the right decision. They're playing 2 test matches at a venue that I would imagine will spin from ball one. Playing over there in Sri Lanka, I would imagine the Sri Lankan team will want conditions to be turning. That will be the way they see themselves beating Australia. So don't be surprised if Sri Lanka were to play 3 spinners, for example, and open the bowling with spin. So I think Australia has a pretty good squad, like I say, for the conditions they're about to play in against that opposition.
I'd love to know your thoughts on whether all tests are absolutely sacrosanct, because a few years ago, before we had the World Test Championship final, tests were just that important, whereas now we're saying we're in the final, so can we use this to look to the future? What do you think individually, test to test, Pup?
I think you know my answer, Nez. There's no such thing as a give a test away to anybody. It's to me, it's still the pinnacle. I think every Australian cricketer still wants to receive that baggy green cap. I think in and around selecting a squad, I can understand why, on a tour, a subcontinent tour, I see it as a great opportunity to even take 1 or 2 extra players to allow them to train in those facilities, to see a different culture, to experience a different country. I see sense in that. But in regards to picking the 11 that step out onto the field, there's no such thing as a token test match.
I did think you might say that, and I agree with you, let it be said. But Cooper Connolly, a youngster that gets an opportunity, he's only played the 4 first-class matches at least. What do you think? Does he make it into that 11, or is it just an experience tour?
Yeah, I probably think it's more of an experience. You think of who's still in the squad, and he may struggle. They may look to him maybe for the second test, depending on how things go, the first test. But I think a bit like what Pup was saying, you literally take them on a tour, get them in and around the Australian setup, understand what it's like, international cricket, what they need to do as a player to keep improving. I like the fact that they're looking at younger players, because we are going to have a big drop-off at some point, and we need to start blooding some guys through.
I think the other point with Cooper Connolly is whenever he's been given an opportunity, stood up and looked right at home, his composure is really impressive, you've got to say. So if something did happen injury-wise or an illness went through the camp, he would step into that, and on what we've seen so far, he'd step in no problems and take to the task.
Now, Ferg, Pup loves the fact that Australian Test team has 2 vice captains and they had to choose between them.
You and I both know the answer.
They've gone with Steve Smith in the end. Ferg, you feel like they've missed a trick by not appointing Travis Head the captain for this series?
Well, that's my gut feel. I do feel like we do need to start looking towards the future. Pat Cummins, a fast bowling captain at the moment, which we haven't seen a lot of in Test cricket, but who knows how long he'll want to hold the candle on that front. So I felt like it's been a great luxury and a wonderful, I suppose, luxury to have Steve Smith ready to go, an experienced captain for so long. But we're getting to that point now where I think we need to make sure that we've got someone else ready to go, stepping into Pat's shoes if there's a long-term injury, etc. So I think it was an opportunity perhaps missed to give Travis Head that experience.
Does he want it?
Well, I don't think he wants the full-time captaincy right now. For if Pat stepped away now, Travis has actually said on a podcast recently that he's not sure he's ready for that right now. But for this series, I felt like it was a good opportunity.
Pup, who would you pick to open out of the squad that's been selected in these conditions? Because we have seen Travis Head, for example, open in these conditions.
I'd keep it pretty consistent, Nez, to be honest. I wouldn't be making too many changes with the batting order. Again, I think you got guys throughout that top 6 or that top 7 that you're probably all going to have to start your innings against spin. That's what I'm saying. I'm expecting conditions in Sri Lanka to turn from ball one, Sri Lanka to open the bowling with the spinner. So whether, I know there's been a bit of talk about Travis Head open the batting, whether he walks out number 1, he's probably going to have to face spin, or if he walks out at number 5, he's going to have to face spin. So I'd be, especially for the first test, I'd be trying to keep things as simple as possible. They go there full of confidence, they're in form. I know conditions are different to what they've just played in Australia, but I'll be keeping things as simple as possible.
Selectors have decided to leave Glenn Maxwell out of the squad. He totally understands their reasoning and says he probably would have made the same decision. What I want to ask you though, Pup, is if Maxie was 27 or 26 and not 36, 37, do you think he would have had a totally different Test career with the way that the game is now? We're far more embracing of unorthodox styles. We're far more embracing of the Bazball-esque, the Sam Constas ramping to Jasprit Burma. Do you think he would have had a different career in a different era?
Oh, I think that's a tough question. I think there's a lot of ifs and buts. I think at the end of the day, if Maxi scored more runs through his journey, and at the right time when he got opportunity, I think he has the talent to have played a lot of Test cricket. But unfortunately, he's had injury setbacks. When he got opportunities, he probably didn't grab it with both hands. He was also in a generation where there was a number of players through that middle order, particularly, that were locked in, that were scoring runs. So I don't know. I think it's tough to pick an era for someone or a generation for someone and say, would things be different? I think when Maxi looks back at the end of his career, he'll say, I had opportunities. I probably just didn't grab them with both hands.
Yeah, my gut feel is that it would have looked very different for him. He had an average of mid-40s at quite an early stage of his career after 20-odd games in first-class cricket. So I think we're far more open-minded now than what we were when Maxi was first coming through. I remember having a good conversation with him at the Cricket Academy when we were in our early 20s, and he talked at length about some of the battles he'd had with coaches on the way through his career, even at that point in his early 20s. And you get the feeling these days it looks very different. And Maxi wasn't able to play as much first-class cricket as he would have liked, probably through periods on the back of Australian selection too. But I love the fact that we're far more open-minded with our selection these days, with our coaching, what the game looks like, reverse sweeps, switch hitting, even the reverse sweep when Maxi was first coming through, reverse lap was almost unheard of and frowned upon at times. So it's great to see Australian cricket heading that direction. And we've seen the Test selection panel actually make some moves into the modern era recently with Travis Head opening the batting in India. So it's great to see the game moving forward, and I do feel like it might have looked a bit different for Maxi if he'd played in a different era.
Of course, you need the players like that in order to get us to the next era, though. So he's played his role regardless, whether or not he got those tests. Pup, he is in great form in the Big Bash heading into the Champions Trophy where he has been selected. Interesting squad though. Aaron Hardie is the only player who will be under 30 by the end of 2025. So they're sticking a lot with that 2023 ODI World Cup winning squad. What do you make of this? Was it a chance to look ahead to the 2027 World Cup campaign?
Again, I think it's a major tournament. I think the Champions Trophy is a mini World Cup, so they're probably looking at it like that. Maybe after the Champions Trophy, they might make some changes. But look, I think this Australian selection panel is not bothered about age. I think we've had this conversation over the past couple of months in and around the Test 11. The age of all the players in the Test 11, and they keep selecting them, same as on the Sri Lankan Test tour. And you look through the Champions Trophy squad, there's a lot of those familiar faces. So I think the selectors are very clear that age is just a number, and if they're performing and doing well and the team's winning, then we're going to keep picking them.
I'd probably just challenge that slightly. The Champions Trophy didn't exist for a long period of time, and they've only just brought it back in. So it's not like it's been a regular tournament on the calendar for a long period of time. It's like, well, this year we don't have an ICC event. Let's bring back the Champions Trophy. So I don't necessarily see the relevance, mainly more so from just a broadcast point of view. Can we get an ICC event every year, and that means we can sell the rights to the broadcaster and get a good amount of money for it. So I think they've missed a trick. I think it's a chance to kind of regenerate and build up for the next World Cup.
Ferg loves it because he gets to wear his white blazer with the gold buttons.
Anytime the ICC offer a trophy, we go for it. We absolutely target it.
Jake Fraser-McGurk is not in this squad. He's in a really interesting patch of his early, young career or a fledgling career. And he's come out and he admits that. He's like, I'm learning with cricket. When it goes bad, it can go very bad. What is your advice to a young gun like Jake Fraser-McGurk, Pup?
I think it's to keep the faith. The way he plays is maximum risk, but it's maximum reward. I think the other thing, what you do, this is the difference between domestic cricket and international cricket. Playing around the world, you're playing different conditions. So for someone like Jake, the way he bats in India against that brand new ball at the top of the innings in an IPL game, for instance, will be very different to some of the BBL conditions, or if he's to play long form cricket, because I know he wants to play all formats, but it just takes time. I think when you're playing like that, the key is shot selection. At the start of your innings, it's maximum risk to be, trying to hit the ball in the air, over the top, hit sixes. But in somewhere like the subcontinent, that's what made him so good. That's what made him stand out in his opportunities in the IPL. So I just think the balance, the growth, learning different conditions. I remember playing with Adam Gilchrist when he was opening the batting in one-day cricket, and we would all say to Gilly, can you just block and not score a run for the first 5 overs? Because if you can get through the first 5 overs, Gilly, every ball you hit will go for 4 or 6. We thought he just needed to give himself 5 overs to see the conditions. Now, back then, that was in one-day cricket. You could afford to do that. T20 cricket, you can't do that. So there's just a balance. For Jake, it might be in Australia, for example, he might need to give himself an over and a half before he's trying to take one downtown, where in the IPL or in Indian conditions, you got to maximise those first 6 overs because it's the best time to bat with that brand new ball. So it's just learning that. But the kid's so talented. I've got no doubt you'll see him back playing for Australia.
Just finally, Marcus Stoinis gets another opportunity in this Champions Trophy squad. Now, he has only scored 150 in ODI cricket in the last 6 years, and it was 6 years ago. In that time, 43 innings, an average of 19.84, a strike rate of 90.31. Should he be in this squad, or was this an opportunity to move on?
I didn't know those numbers, Nez, until you just said. I actually can't believe that, and it's probably because I've seen Marcus play so much T20 cricket.
Yeah.
My mind just thought he's been successful in both formats, but yeah, those numbers are unbelievable and surprising. I think he's probably picked in this squad because there's no Cameron Green because he's still out injured, so they've gone with Stoinis as the all-rounder. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one because his T20 form's been phenomenal. So you just assume he'll be able to transition that into one-day cricket. But by the sounds of those numbers, yeah, I wonder if he'll be in the starting 11. I'm not sure.
Michael Clarke, thank you very much for your thoughts. As always, we'll chat to you next week. Always so much going on in the world of cricket. And up next, we're going to talk about the Big Bash because our mate Aaron Finch says they need to create a window for the internationals. Interesting discussions going on about domestic T20 leagues. Dinesh Karthik, playing in the SA20 in South Africa, has come out and said this is the second best T20 league in the world, while our own Aaron Finch has come out and said we need to find a way to create a window off the back of people like Steve Smith smacking hundreds for the Sixers in the couple of games that he plays. What do you think, Lise? Can we create a window, and is the SA20 better than the Big Bash?
Okay, first SA T20, I think SA20 is, given the amount of stars, international stars as well that go to that. The only thing is Big Bash has always played at the same time as the Test cricket. So unless you want to move Big Bash completely out of this period, it's always going to be hard to try and get our Test stars in.
And they've made sacrifices, South Africa, because this time last year we were criticising them for the uncapped players that they sent to New Zealand for the Test series because it clashed with that. They've still made it to the World Test Championship final.
Yeah, it didn't cost them too much at all, really. So still making it through to the Test Championship. Great effort from them. I think the BBL has to just accept the fact that we're going to be missing the majority of our Test players for the foreseeable future, which is a real shame because we know what the BBL could be. But the fact of the matter is, star power is king or queen, and we're seeing SA20 get a lot more of that. So they're sitting second at the moment.
You're surrounded by queens today, aren't you?
I am, aren't I? Thorn between two roses.
Jai Richardson is going for another shoulder surgery. Decided it's the best chance for Ashes preparation. You know what it's like to have a career curtailed by consistent major injuries with the ACLs. Are you feeling for him?
I am, and it gets more difficult as you get older, no doubt about it. So he's 28 now, nearly heading towards that 30 mark, and every one of these injuries will just be that little bit tougher to get back from. I'm glad he's making the call, and it's a tough call, to go and get the surgery now and not risk the availability of the Ashes. I think that's got to be number one for him. But Australia also need his skills. He's fast, he swings it both ways. We're going to need every asset we've got up our sleeve with the fast bowling department. it's a real pity for him because he was starting to show some really good signs early in the summer.
Sacrificing the short term for the long term, Jasprit Burma, that conversation needs to be had. He'll likely miss the group stage of the Champions Trophy. Then you've got 5 tests against England, as well as the IPL in between. How do they manage him?
Very carefully. I think I still would like to know what his injury is as well. I still haven't figured that one out. But they've got to kind of put him in ice first, I think, and get him through for the Test series against England. That's their first priority.
So you think rule out the Champions Trophy for now?
Yeah, I would. Again, we don't know the exact nature of the injury, but you do everything you can to make sure he's right to go.
He's such an important piece of the puzzle, isn't he? Even Michael Clarke last week said he's the best ever 3-format fast ball.
He did so much heavy lifting in this Border-Gavaskar trophy. I think it just showed how important he is to that lineup.
Well, don't go anywhere because after this break, we're going to take on the short stuff. Some of the most remarkable footage you will ever see in the world of cricket. Liam Haskett bowling. Who takes the crowd catch? Of course, it's his dad. Would you believe it? The best bit about this, though, as we take on the short stuff, is the reaction right here. Oh, and we realise we're on camera. What do you think about it, Lisa Sthalekar?
Oh, that was uncomfortable for everyone, wasn't it? Even watching that again. I don't know what's going on there, so I'll just leave it.
Dad did a great job. He's protecting the crowd behind him. I thought it was a wonderful performance.
The family WhatsApp group would have been going off in that moment to be a flyer on the wall. Should you be able to review waist-high no balls? Maxi was robbed.
Yes, you should, and it's been done in the ICC T20 World Cup. You measure from the belly button down. It sits on a hawkeye. You know the height and the ball tracks, and if it goes over or under, then you know.
Maxi's not happy about it, let's put it that way.
Fair
Sam
enough,
Constance has been caught using his CEA cricket bag whilst playing for the Thunder. Is this an absolute rookie error by the young man?
Oh, he's just asking for trouble right there, Sammy Constance. But I'll tell you what, it's great to see the players taking the mickey out of each other. Good sign for the Thunder camp going forward.
Steve Smith, is he going to make it to the LA Olympics in 2028?
No.
Right.
Short stuff. What else do you want?
See you next week.